They were never really quite under control, the Afghan communists. I mean,
I mean, but they were very eager to prove themselves to Moscow. I mean, the persistence is
they
quite staggering.
they were eager to prove they were good communists because they believed they were good communists. But as I say, they believed in some ways they were better communists than the Russians. After all, I mentioned this thing about Stalin.
Yes.
They were busy killing people. And when Brezhnev or whoever it was said, I think that's a mistake, they said, what do you mean? It's what you did. We're just doing what you did. And the Russians were very upset by that. But I mean, one of the things that happened and one of the triggers for the invasion was that towards the end, uh, Taraki was dead. Amin was in charge, and Amin looked as though they felt they were losing control of Amin because they thought that Amin was reactivating his connections with the Americans. Amin had studied in New York.
Yes.
He then come back, he'd been a communist and all of that, but towards the end of his time, so towards the end of 1978, the Russians were getting suspicious of his connections with the Americans. And what they believed, the Americans had been thrown out of um, Iran. And
Yes.
so they'd lost their listening bases. They had bases for listening what was
Yes.
going
Yes. Yes.
on.
Yes.
And the Russians thought that the Americans wanted to reconstitute them in Afghanistan. There are documents, or there is a document, which does, it's a CIA document, which does mention the possibility of transferring the listening bases to Afghanistan. Now, if you're a historian, you find a document
Yes.
like that, you say, the Americans are intending to do that, which is, of course, rubbish. What it means is that some Americans are thinking they might do it. It doesn't mean it was a possibility, it was a policy. I don't think it was a policy, but there was an idea going around, and the Russians picked this up one way or another and became extremely suspicious. And that also triggered off the invasion. They'd lost faith in Amin. They thought that he was selling out to the Americans, and they thought they needed to get in before he did, before the Americans got into Afghanistan. As usual, the whole process, as it always is very confused. I mean, decision making is in governments, as in everyday life amongst human beings, is always much more confused than outside observers think.